Well, good morning. Good morning. Hey, it's good to see you. So the guy went to the dog breeder and he was looking at various dogs. And the breeder said, well, this one over here, now this is the best bred dog in the world. And the guy said, what? What can he do? Can he talk? The breeder said, better than that. This dog is so well bred that if he could talk, he wouldn't talk to either of us. Welcome to this place, which we make holy by our presence. These doors are open to all. Bring your brokenness and your power. Bring your fatigue, your early morning aches, and your energy, your fears and anxieties, loves and hopes, for here you need not hide nor pretend, nor be anything other than who you are and who you are called to be. Come into this place where the ordinary is sanctified, where the human is celebrated, where compassion is strength. Welcome to this place. Together, we make it a holy place. Well, next week will be the 10th anniversary of Elizabeth and the kids and I moving to Buffalo. And we came and we bought a large house and we filled it to capacity. We moved in with 3 kids, but there was just a little bit of elbow room left over, and we filled that too. She gave birth to William on our couch, and now we are 6. 2 children, 2 teenagers, and 2 adults. As the person who does all of the laundry, most of the cooking, and the only one who knows how to replace a toilet paper roll, I've explained it, I've demonstrated it, but still every time a roll runs out, I find a new one on the floor. Nobody else can negotiate with the little springy thing. I don't know what it calls itself, but I know how it thinks, and I know what it wants, so I can make it work. But you can't explain to children. You gotta think like the springy thing. Also, I'm the one who gets to dig the hair clogs out of the drains. And the hair I pull out of the drains is always gray. Like, we've got so many hair colors. We've got yellow, orange, auburn, brown, and Elizabeth tells me my hair is black. I don't believe it, but she's a doctor and a redhead, so I don't argue. We've got half a rainbow of hair colors, but you mix them all together in a drain, and somehow, magically, it's gunmetal gray. Anyway, as the guy in charge of the monthly drain clog, the weekly laundry piles, and the daily roll of toilet paper, I can report that our habitat is amply inhabited. But the population of 6 is just the people. Plus, we're dog owners. Now, our dog passed away, but we're still dog people, and the inevitability of our next dog pretty much counts as having one. I'm holding out for one of those orange Welsh corgis. But eventually, if I hold out long enough, some random dog will just appear out of nowhere, like our last one did. My son Malcolm has 2 ferrets. They somehow slink and weasel into his bureau, and they nestle pungently in the clothing that I have washed and folded. And we have an aquarium. Now, we used to have fish, and I think we got these like little frogs to keep them company or clean the tank or something, but the frogs killed the fish, and now they mostly float. They play dead. It's their favorite game. Or maybe they're in a staring contest with each other. Whatever it is, it takes a lot out of them, because you walk by and drizzle a little bit of that dried shrimp in there, and they just swim like crazy. And then they settle back into whatever lazy game they're playing, floating either at the top or the bottom of the tank. So if you're keeping count, we're at 10, plus a certain amount of matter soon to be displaced by a medium dog. But that's not all. Because we've got kids who walk around with crumbly crackers in their hands, and teens who take turns leaving the kitchen a mess overnight. They're in a rotating schedule. One of them ignores the dishes while the other ignores the counters, and then the next night they switch roles. The next slide, please. And every so often, this slow accumulation reaches a critical mass, and just when it seems that we're heading for some kind of household disaster, a cleaning crew materializes. Like nighttime elves trying to grant some desperate wish, and they pick up crumbs and they lick our unwiped kitchen counters. And the more mess we make, the more of them manifest. They even multiply. They make more of themselves. Or they would, except, well, this is the kind of cleaning crew that'll shock you in the morning, like when you turn on the light and they skitter and scatter away from the sink. And some of them scritchety scratch in the walls. And you know it's time to get to work. Because suddenly the population of your house has jumped from 10 to 100. And it'll be 10,000 by Tuesday. So at the first warning signs, we go into disaster mode, scorched earth. And I mean scorched earth in the sense that Elizabeth says, you know, it's just time we burn this place down and start over. And I say, no, 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 we can really handle this. We can take this house back. We tear the place apart and we put it back together. And just to be clear here, when I talk about a messy house, I mean, and I know this is going to sound a little bit elitist, but I'm talking about the master's degree version of a messy house, not the high school dropout version, so adjust your mental image. Anyway, so the population of our house is in flux. There's a bunch of us. We get the occasional population boom, we bust it, and the cycle starts over. Pests. Or in a way, I guess we've got to call them pets, since the kids are always leaving food out for them. You got to remind Malcolm 10 times to feed his ferrets, but they never forget to leave scum on the counters and crumbs on the floor. I feed them too, by which I mean peanut butter in snap traps, and I inject poison into the crannies. I even set up little motels. And they show up not to be the guests, but to be the janitors. Roaches don't move into hotels. They just want to clean them and go home. And I encourage them. I say, you know, take some of the continental breakfast with you when you go. I think of these guests as pests in my house, but that's culture, not nature. From nature's standards, I'm just passing through. A fleeting inconvenience, a bizarre guest who demands an artificial habitat. Some strange box specifically designed to keep nature out, which is comical since the humans in the house are part of nature too. From nature's perspective, I live in a big piece of litter, something that Mother Earth will have to clean up eventually. Not just me in particular. From nature's perspective, Notre Dame and the Egyptian pyramids are just big chunks of man-made trash too. The termites see dead wood and they go to work. Never mind that the dead wood is a cathedral. Humans build temples and pyramids because we desperately want to believe that life has purpose, but secretly doubt it. Termites don't have existential crises. They don't even seem to care whether they exist or not. They just see a job to do and they do it. I sit at a desk pondering the meaning of life. Sometimes I fill a page, sometimes I have nothing to say. But a termite would see the desk and just start eating it because the wood's not alive anymore. And then eventually termite droppings could fertilize a new tree. Sigmund Freud wrote that you'll never convince a man that he's a termite. And sometimes I wish that Dr. Freud were wrong. Everything in nature has a job to do. Some creatures clean up. Some are there to make a mess. The human being got started as a scavenger, not a mighty hunter, but a biped jackal, waiting for the pride of lions to finish sloppily stuffing themselves with gazelle and wander off. And then the humans would show up and chew on the bones. And then critters would run off with the scraps. Insects would swarm the fragments, and bacteria would ingest the rest of the mess. But now the natural order is out of whack. Humans have stuffed the lions for museum pieces, become the #1 trash producer on the planet, and outlawed the waste management species. We've turned the mice and bugs into illegal vigilantes. We have international summit conferences about how to deal with the problems of pollution, and the creepy-crawlies just keep cleaning. Insects appear on the first page of the Bible. God approaches a swampy chaos, all of the matter of creation, and starts dividing it, sky from slop, and then the slop into land and sea. God populates the sea with fish and the sky with birds, and then on the 6th day, quote, God said, "Let the earth bring forth the cattle, the creeping things, the beast of the earth after its kind." And it was so. God said this, and nothing happened. And so then God had to do it manually. The next verse, God made the beast of the earth after its kind, the cattle, and every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. And God saw that it was good. God knew that all these birds and beasts and cattle would need someone to clean up after them. The creeps were deemed good in the beginning, but in their next biblical moment, they will appear as one of the plagues that were used to punish the Egyptians for refusing to let God's people go. These disasters include lice, gnats, and flies, and then come the cicadas. The Lord made an east wind blow across the land, and locusts invaded all of Egypt and settled down in every area of the country in great numbers. They covered the ground until it was black. They devoured everything growing in the fields, the fruit on the trees. Nothing green remained on plant or tree in all of the land of Egypt. The good news is the plague of insects probably cleaned up the prior plague when it rained dead frogs. These invaders were well-organized anarchists. As we read in the book of Proverbs, locusts have no king, yet they advance together in ranks. And also, they're kosher. As God reveals to Moses on the mountaintop, you may eat any kind of locust, cricket, or grasshopper. John the Baptizer was famously an insectivore, subsisting on a diet of locusts and wild honey. And not to spoil the ending, but insects also get a big moment in the last book of the Bible, the Revelation, when God punishes the heathens and the pagans and the Unitarian Universalists. With an army of locusts the size of horses, with human faces, women's hair, it specifies for some reason, even though men and women had the same hairstyles in the Bible, lions' teeth, and scorpion stingers. And their tails, we read, had the power to torment people for 5 months. I'm not precisely certain what this might mean. Apparently, the poison in their stingers was not lethal, but just enough to give unbelievers a hard case of seasonal depression. So the Bible gives mixed messages about creeping things. An essay on the topic could be called The Good, the Bad, and the Crunchy. But what the Bible and the biology text agree on is that the creeps shall inherit the earth. Turns out the TV news agrees on that too. Well, thank you. The Egyptians, who withstood the plague of insects, had a special religious veneration for scarab beetles, which roll up balls of dung to lay their eggs in. And they saw in this action a parallel with the God whose job it was to roll the sun across the sky as if the sun was a big ball of, dung. And since the Egyptians believed that the sun was then swallowed by a goddess each night and rebirthed in the morning, the scarab also signified regeneration. So the scarab beetle, the dung beetle, is a common symbol in Egyptian jewelry. It was highly fashionable to go around ancient Egypt with amulets and rings depicting dung beetles. In ancient China, the insect of immortality was the cicada, which, depending on the specific type, can spend the first year or 16 years of its life underground, and then emerge, climb a tree, sing for a month, and die, having laid eggs of cicada babies, who will then fall to earth, burrow, and start the cycle all over again. So it became customary for the Chinese to bury dead relatives with a carved jade cicada in their mouth as a sign that burial was not the end of existence and that death is not the end of song. As a little boy who somehow ended up in Ohio, around 1987, I got to witness a great Cincinnati cicada awakening. And the elementary school prepped us with a month of lessons and even a song to sing to the cicadas when they arrived. They came like a great humming cloud. They covered the trees. They left their hollow shells everywhere. Apparently, they had been sleeping in Cincinnati since 1971, when Tom Jones settled them down by singing "She's a Lady." And they slept through classic rock, disco, punk, and new wave, and they awakened to Whitney Houston singing "I Want to Dance with Somebody." Actually, come to think of it, that's the year everybody was listening to the Dirty Dancing soundtrack cassette. So they awakened to "I've Had the Time of My Life." And some of them must have thought that they had slept backward to the summer of 1963. In Greek mythology, the cicadas had once been human musicians who were blessed by the muses with the power to sing and dance without ever needing rest or food. But because they never ate and they kept singing, they just got smaller and smaller and smaller until finally they shriveled down to look like dried crickets, and then they dropped dead. But the muses blessed them again with the ability to rise up singing every few years, performed for a month straight, drop dead, and then the cycle continued. The Athenians even minted silver coins with cicada images, symbolizing devotion to the muses of song, dance, and poetry. I don't count my blessings as often as I should. And when I do, it would never occur to me to count all of these uninvited house guests. But I suppose in a way I should, because my anxieties are always festering somewhere in the back of my brain, creeping up on me, multiplying, skittering around. And you can't fumigate for anxiety. I tried that once. It just produces paranoia, which is even worse. Shakespeare said, sorrows come not in single spies, but in battalions. Definitely true of pests, also true of worries. Well, I can't drain the swamps of Washington any more than I can clean up the mess in Israel. But this week, we did a deep cleaning of our kitchen. One little room in one little corner of the world. And even after one of those nights, lying awake in anxiety, coming downstairs to a safe, clean kitchen makes the morning a little brighter, and it helps me to take the next step. Coming here, or going to the college, or bringing my kids on an activity. Taking a look around and asking, Now what can I do to make this place a little warmer, a little safer, and a little bit less creepy? Thank you.